A housewife, a home entrepreneur, and a business professional walk into a market. Each is armed with a shopping list, a budget, the ability to check for quality, the knowledge of current prices, and the skill to negotiate prices. Each woman walks out with the best products and prices because they take pride in managing their homes and businesses effectively. These women are you. You are smart, you are patient, you are disciplined, you have great management skills. You budget, you set goals, you analyze reviews, you compare pricing, you wait for sales to get the best price, and you plan your contingencies. You do what you need to manage your home, your business, and your work effectively. You should leverage these abilities to grow your wealth, your family's wealth. Start thinking of money management and investing as planning for a shopping trip, something you have done countless times. How is growing your money similar to a shopping trip? Let's break it down. Create a list. The first step you take when planning a shopping trip is creating a shopping list. You don't want to forget to buy a gift for Marcy after all. Similarly, the first step to growing your money is creating a list of short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. Goals like traveling to the shopping mecca of the world, funding an international education for your child, buying a vacation home, and planning for retirement. Your goal list, like your shopping list, is a roadmap that should help you stay on track and achieve your goals. Budget. The second step you take is deciding a budget. You can't buy cricket tickets for everyone if you don't have enough money to cover costs. Similarly, the second step to growing your money is deciding how much you can invest every month after paying for essentials such as groceries, utility bills, etc. By setting an investment budget like a shopping budget, you can systematically invest every month and become a disciplined investor. Budget allocation. The third step you take is determining how much money to spend on each purchase. You allocate funds based on importance. For example, buying school books for your child commands a bigger portion of your shopping budget, while replacing curtains in your living room commands a smaller portion. Similarly, the third step to growing your money is dividing your assets. For example, you can allocate a higher amount to buy a smartphone in 6 months and a smaller amount to buy a car in 4 years. Once you achieve your goal, you can reallocate these funds to a different goal based on importance or urgency. Market research. The fourth step you take is research. You read reviews and compare prices to ensure you are buying the right product at the right price. Similarly, the fourth step to growing your money is determining which fund can help you achieve each goal. For example, if your goal is to build wealth over the long term, an equity fund might suit your needs. However, if you want to buy a smartphone in 6 to 8 months, a liquid fund or a debt fund might suit your needs. Just like when you shop, researching the different types of funds available and aligning your goals to a fund can potentially help you achieve your goals. Stay invested. The fifth step you take is being patient. You wait for an annual sale to buy a better quality product for a lower price. Similarly, the fifth step to growing your money is being patient and staying invested until it is time to achieve your goal. Don't let market fluctuations make your decisions. Do your research and make informed decisions before withdrawing from a fund. By staying invested, you aim to achieve your goals. And lastly, inflation and contingencies. Before you head off on your shopping trip, you plan for contingencies. Prices fluctuate over time, and having a contingency amount in your budget can help prevent you from going home empty-handed. Similarly, when planning to invest, you should account for inflation. By following the same steps you take when planning a shopping trip, you can start managing your money effectively and investing smartly. You are a smart, capable woman. Take charge of your financial future today and aim to build a better future for you and your family. An investor education and awareness initiative by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
And welcome to another episode of this investor education and awareness initiative of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund in association with your favorite personal finance magazine, Outlook Money. I am Vish, your host for the day. Today we mark International Women's Day. Women today stand toe to toe with men in almost every professional arena. Yet it is a well-known fact that for the same job, women earn less than men on an average, and that is a trend globally. Men and women undergo different life experiences, differ in their knowledge and attitude toward risks, and as financial planning is a very personal exercise, there is need to look at the course of action for women differently. Unfortunately, evidence shows that women are less likely to consider investment as a priority. This is despite that financial planning may be even more necessary for women, since it has to meet and make up for the gender pay gap, differentiated career peaks, and life stages that slow down earnings. And last but not the least, the fact that women tend to live longer than men, making retirement planning crucial for them. So there has to be a larger push towards making women financially aware and helping them with their money journey. So today for this webinar, our focus is on women in finance. The theme of today's episode is financial empowerment strategies for women. And to help our viewers, especially women, find that right approach towards financial planning, we have with us some veterans from the field of finance. Our first guest is Mr. K.S. Rao, Head Investor Education and Distribution Development, Aditya Birla Sun Life Asset Management Company. Mr. Rao, an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, has spent over 2 decades in mutual fund industry, and in his current role, he leads his organization's efforts towards investor education and distribution development. We are also joined by Mr. Amit Trivedi, author, speaker, trainer, and blogger with over 26 years of professional experience in capital markets. As a trainer, he has trained over 83,000 participants through almost 1,300 workshops across 130 different locations across the country. Both Mr. Rao and Mr. Trivedi have done extensive work in the area of investor education. Today, we are also joined by Ms. Kiran Telang, a certified financial planner who is registered as an investment advisor with SEBI. She is also a founder member of the Financial Planners Guild of India. A subject expert on personal finance, Ms. Telang has also authored a book on retirement called Mindful Retirement. So let's get straight into it. My first question is for Mr. K.S. Rao. Mr. Rao, how do you define money management? Since we are talking about women and money management, how do you define money management and what are the basic building blocks of managing one's money?
Good morning, Vishal, and thanks to Outlook Money for having all of us here. Happy International Women's Day for everyone. I mean, especially to the speaker of the day for us is Kiran. Happy International Women's Day. Indeed, it's always a pleasure to have this happening on an International Women's Day. And this year, the theme of the International Women's Day is choose to challenge. Probably let us see how women can take this option, how they can challenge, choose to challenge or choose to manage the money. And it could be a wonderful question coming from you is how they can manage money. And, like when you ask for the definition of the money, I was reading somewhere, except the economist, everyone knows what is the definition of the money. And it's interestingly, there is one book which I was reading some time back. This is an author, Ayn Rand. I mean, she says money is only a tool and it will take you wherever you wish, but you are the driver in the seat. And it's like, managing money is something like, you are the driver in the seat, how you manage your money. And it's also, it's true, like life is always a journey and money is a fuel for it. And one has to learn to manage it very efficiently. And how you do to manage, is it the budgeting alone? And sometimes, especially for the women, like we used to do lot many sessions across. And there is one thing which I understood from them with the practical experience. Don't ask them to budget the money because that will create unnecessary strain and constraint. Rather than asking, taking, no, they take over the money and managing the money, that can become the most effective way. Because when you are managing the money, you have the priorities in place and how you are managing it. And I always tell, how you can, what is the basic building blocks? This is a very acronym way I used to tell. Building blocks for the money is nothing but your 4G network. And this 4G network is, first you need to get your money. Then whatever you are getting that money, how you need to ensure you grow your money. And then third G is, not growing alone is not sufficient. You need to protect your money. That money has to be saved rightly, and you have to protect your life, and you need to protect your money. And the last one is the charity. You need to give your money. within these 4 Gs, I call this as a GPS of money: grow it, protect it, and share it. And when you have a right financial advisor and you yourself become a great financial advisor, you can manage your money well. Like in Indian context, I was watching a cartoon. Our finance minister, incidentally, she was a minister for home before she is taking over the finance. If every home minister can take over the finance, then they can manage money very well, and every budget can become a unique budget like 2021. And that's a family budget of the life.
Right. Thank you so much. Uh, while money management is important, my question is to Ms. Telang. Ms. Telang, why should women understand money management, especially? What is the importance of money management for them?
See, money management by itself is a very important, I would say, life skill. So whether be it men or women, it is very important that they understand money. Because if there isn't enough money in life, you cannot be comfortable. So even if you think in general terms, where we talk about something like a Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, so the basic things, which is your house, food, shelter, and protection, all these things are bought using money. So if the money is not in place, it is very difficult for people to move ahead in life. More so for women, because it is usually seen that there are cultural nuances, there are societal issues, because of which women have always been in the maybe the background in at least the last couple of centuries, where women have not had so much say in money management, or they have not been empowered by having control over their own money or the family finances. So it is very important that women understand their own money. They are capable of handling it if the need ever arises to handle it alone. And since longevity in women is much more than men, it is highly likely that there will be a situation where the women has to manage the money alone at some point in time. So without understanding money, there is no comfortable life possible.
Right, absolutely. The understanding of money is crucial for everyone, both men and women. It is important for every individual. So I'll come back to Mr. Rao. Mr. Rao, do you think it holds special significance for women? Is managing money different for women as compared to men? And if you think so, can you elaborate? Why do you think so?
As Kiran rightly said it is a life skill. Whether it's and money doesn't know who is managing it. Money will not discriminate whether it is in the hands of man or in the hands of women. But however, for women, there are situations which are very different than the men, and that's where it comes. They need to manage money efficiently and it's so diligently. Simple reason being, for us it's the age of the life. For women, it could be a stage of the life, and we like like there are multiple stages. There are stages of the student, then the employment, single woman, then you have a married woman with kids, then there is a time which will come, you are taking care of the parents. These are the stages of life. Probably they need to pay utmost attention in which stage of the life they are. That's where they need to manage their money very differently. And however, they are very their personality, I think, emotionally they are much better than the men, and they are more caring, they are more sharing, and they are more of the advising. And probably the money management skill will come naturally to them, and it is all that what they need to do is that they need to take over the responsibility. But I have seen in my own industry, in the mutual fund industry, today we have quite a good number of women financial advisors, and there is quite a good number of women investors which we are coming in. And in the last 1 year, I have seen most of the women taking over their finances and owning their finances. It is, I don't think I look at, those statistics says only 20% of the women are financially literate, but other statistics also says in Indian context, only 20% of the women are in the working force. And whichever the way I look at, now they are much forward and they are taking over their money. And here they need to take utmost care is, how they plan for their retirement, how they plan for their child education. Probably that's where they need to pay attention. And I look back, there is a small thing from my own family I would like to share. My grandmother, way back, my grandfather used to run a Gurukulam school, and my grandmother used to manage that Gurukulam's all the requirements on her own. And she was not, she was not an expert in the finance, but she know how to keep and what to pay, when to pay, what to keep, and that's where they are very dexterous around it.
Right. And as you rightly mentioned, there are women financial planners now, women advisors, there are women investors. There are also very a lot of women centric products also in the financial markets. So I come to Mr. Trivedi. Mr. Trivedi, how important are these women centric products in meeting specific requirements of women? Should they consider them, and what should they think before narrowing down on such a product which is designed specifically for women?
Thanks, Vishav, and fantastic initiative by both Outlook Money and Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund on this International Women's Day, and wishing a great future to all the women who are listening to us. Coming to the specific products, Vishav, I think all the products need to be divided into two categories. There is an emotional appeal of all these products, and there is the need which is satisfied by these products. You look at the utility point of view or situation point of view. In a woman's life, there are certain specific conditions where certain things are required. Take, for example, certain health related matters wherein certain health insurance products are really important. Or there are some government initiatives like Sukanya Samruddhi Yojana for the girl child. I mean, these could be good products, but there are a few others which may simply have an emotional appeal and no utility per se. So one needs to separate between utility and emotional appeal and choose the products which serve the basic objective of the woman. And as both Kiran and Rao sir mentioned, this is individuals' decision or families' needs which are to be protected and fulfilled. And to that extent, the product should be evaluated.
Right, absolutely. Now, when we talk about money management, in general, irrespective of which gender we are talking about, we always talk about financial goals and planning with financial goals in mind. So, Ms. Telang, I'll come to you. Can you please help us understand, are there some financial goals that are, most significant and even, unique to women, especially, for their different stages of life, as Mr. Rao was talking about different stages, and how can women achieve these goals?
So let me take it at a broader perspective first. If we look at personal finance, I mean, let's split it into personal and finance. So the finance part remains same for everybody. The difference comes in the personal part. More so for the women, it has to start with the mindset. So the mindset of the women and the mindset of the society. So in the mindset of the woman, the first thing probably what comes is that I can't do it. That is the feeling that it's too much, too numerical. Maybe I'm not good at it. So that obstacle has to be overcome first, and then women choose not to do things because they feel that there's already too much on their plate. So I don't want to do it because there's already too much that I'm doing. So these two things, once they're overcome, then they can actually sensibly look at the goals. The other part is the mindset of the society, wherein a lot of people think that women should not be involved in money. In families also, a lot of times we see that it's only the men who are taking care of money and the women are not involved in the decision. So that mindset again has to change gradually at a family level. So that is the basic unit of the society. So once these things are there, when the women is involved, then the family finances, the family goals can be looked at together. So if you look at a typical family, the goals would be education of the children, settling them down, basically their marriages, and the retirement for the couple. So in all these, it is not an individual goal, it is a family goal. So the woman has to have an equal say. And nowadays, where women are earning their own money, it should not happen that it's only one partner who's investing and the other partner is spending. It should be equal investing, equal spending in proportion to what they're earning. So that will give them both control over their own assets. And God forbid, if there is a problem in future, the woman will have something to fall back upon. A lot of cases where we see that the men folk are investing their money, whereas the women's income is being used to run the family. So at a point in time, if things go bad, the woman is left with nothing. So that creates a very difficult situation. So these are probably certain cases where the woman is maybe still a little behind the men in terms of personal finance. So whenever I would say a woman is earning, ensure that she creates her own asset. I mean, if you are an earning woman, if you have your income, or if you have an inheritance for that matter, so take care that you understand what you're doing with it, and don't just hand over the charge to somebody else in your family. So understand what's happening.
Right. Just a follow up on that. There are many women, who do not want to get into management of household finances. They argue that my husband would take care of it, right? So, is this the right approach? Since you mentioned, they also need to be financially independent. But doesn't it make the job allocation efficient? So, how should they approach this kind of a situation?
Uh, so let us not look at it from a discord point of view or a dissent in the family that your money, my money. As I said, these are family goals that you're taking care of, and while it is okay that the nitty gritty is taken care of by some one person in the family, it's usually the husband or the father. The woman needs to be aware of what is there and just not sign blankly on the papers. So it's okay if somebody else is taking care of, updation of the records or managing, whatever taxes have to be paid and all those practical things which are being done. But the woman needs to know. So if the woman is not involved, it will be very, very difficult for her to manage if at all a scene comes where she has to manage it alone. So see, 99% of the cases, nothing wrong will happen. But in that 1% case where that one woman has to face a problem, it becomes very difficult for her. And there are lakhs and lakhs of cases. I mean, if we look at the population of the country, imagine the number of women who face, even if you look at a 1% rate. I mean, this is a random number that I'm throwing. 1% is a huge number. So many women could be facing discrimination or ill treatment. 99% of the women will never face it. So even if the husband or the father is managing the money, it will be fine in most women's cases. But where the problem comes, it's going to be really bad.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And when we talk about investing from the perspective of women, we also do understand that in the households that especially Indian households, the exposure to money management is not equally balanced when it comes to men and women. Women are not that aware about what different financial products are there that they can invest in. So in such a situation, it is also the job of everyone to make women aware about what are the choices do they have. So I come to Mr. Trivedi. Mr. Trivedi, can you tell us which mutual fund schemes women should consider if they want to invest their money, and also are there any women centric mutual fund schemes depending based on their risk profile and their life goals?
So years ago, one of the mutual funds had a woman-centric product, but there are no women-centric products any longer in the industry now. Having said that, you mentioned about depending on their risk profile. There's no uniform thing like a gender-based risk profile. So each woman will have a different risk profile, and the same woman also can have a different risk profile at different points in time. There could be different risk profile with respect to different goals also that one may have. Take for example, if somebody is looking at accumulating a contingency fund, then the risk profile would be extremely low. Whereas for the same person, if the goal is accumulating retirement corpus 25 years down the line, then the risk profile could be higher. So it's not a standard risk profile is number one. Number two, given that, look at mutual funds not as a product, but as a means of managing money, or rather outsourcing of the money management to an expert team. And to that extent, instead of trying to look at women-centric products, it's better to identify one's own requirements and then find out suitable mutual fund schemes. Out of the total menu of mutual funds, there are enough number of schemes where one should be able to find a proper mix to satisfy one's own unique situation and unique needs.
Vishav, if you permit, I may like to add something on this risk profile part that Amit was describing. So he rightly said that there's no gender specific risk profile. But what I have noticed in my practice is that many times the risk tolerance in women is lower because they don't understand the products. So once they start understanding the why and how of certain products, they are very comfortable with taking the risk. So even maybe a 70-year-old woman will be okay to put money in equity mutual funds if she understands what's happening. I mean, if other things are taken care of. So I think that is also a very important factor when we talk about risk profile generally.
Yeah, but at the same time, let me also add to what Kiran said. A lot of times women think that they don't understand, whereas actually they understand far better. And a lot of times men think that they understand, Okay. I don't want to complete the sentence, but that's what happens. A lot of time, and I think many of us have come across situations where there is an overconfidence in some people, and there is a sort of diffidence in some people, and more women tend to be on the diffidence side, that I don't know, so how can I take a risk? And that's what Kiran was mentioning. It's important to understand what we understand, and it's important to understand what we don't understand, and then take a call. Wherever we don't understand, either we acquire knowledge or we stay away from the product.
Right. Thank you for this insightful discussion among you two. But now, since we are talking about women, how should they invest their money, we also have two different kinds of women, I would say, in our country when it comes to professional responsibilities. There are a significant portion of women in our country who work as homemakers, while an increasingly larger segment is also entering the professional arena. So there needs to be some clarity when we talk about financial planning for women. How do we make the distinction between the two, because rules cannot be same for both of them? So I direct this question to Ms. Telang. How do we differentiate between the two categories when we are talking about financial planning?
See, as I mentioned earlier too, that financial planning is basically for the family goals. So if you look at a homemaker versus a woman who has a corporate career, the only difference between them is the money that they are earning, right? So a corporate woman careerist will have a salary income coming in, whereas a homemaker will be a part of the pool of money that her husband brings into the kitty. It has to be accepted that a woman who's a homemaker will not have her own income unless she has inherited some money and there is interest income or other kind of income on that inheritance that she's earning. So that cannot be changed. I mean, it is a fact that she does not have a separate income. So when you're creating a financial plan for both these categories of women, the homemaker and the professional, it will always be focused on the family goals. And while we are looking at the professional woman also to have her separate assets that she's creating in her name from her income, we cannot do the same thing for the homemaker because she does not have her own income. And it is also important to understand some bit of taxation here, that a husband gifting money to his wife so that she can invest in her name is not a solution. So a lot of people think that could be a solution where the homemaker can create assets in her name, but taxation, tax laws say that a husband gifting to women, there is a clubbing provision wherein whatever income, whatever interest or income she's making out of that investment will be clubbed with her husband's tax. So that is not a solution. So for a homemaker, what she needs to be careful about is that she needs to be aware of what is happening with the money that her husband is earning, where is it invested, who is the signatory. She needs to be a joint holder in most of the investments that are there. I think that is the key part that a homemaker can do, so that in case there is a problem in the future, she will be capable of taking charge if need be. Whereas for a professional woman, while the husband and the wife are investing for the family goals together, they could also have separate investments of their own, which they desire with their own money. So there could be professional development, or there could be personal interest areas which they need to fund for, so they can do so from their own money as well.
Right. And when we talk about homemakers, there is also a change that is coming, in the last few years or maybe a decade or so, where more and more women who have been homemakers traditionally, they are now, trying to expand their horizons. There are women who are running some businesses from their homes. There are also women who are planning to do that. In the place that I live in, there are women who are running home delivery kitchen services, from their households. So there are also women who are planning to expand their business, or give it the form of a proper business in the next few years. So I direct this question to Mr. Rao. How should a woman who is planning to start her own business over the next few years, how should they plan their mutual fund investments in the current time?
Yeah, thanks, Vishwa, for this very interesting and discussion. I really was loving those answers coming from the Kiran on homemaker vis-a-vis the professional, how they can manage. And here it comes, I go back to what Amit said earlier. When somebody is investing, who is ready to open a business little later, means it could be, I presume it's a short term, right? It's maybe, 3 months down the line or 1 year down the line, you are going to invest your money and you are keeping your money for that. Probably in the mutual fund space, you have a liquid funds, or you have a duration funds, short duration fund, or it could be a little longer. You have a corporate bond funds. Probably they need to choose those funds which is her investment horizon. If she is investing for, she needs this money after 3 months. She's starting a business after 3 months. Then she can put the money into the liquid fund. And if it is a little more than 3 to 9 months, it could be a short duration fund, or little beyond, it could be a my corporate bond funds. Can be a option to choose. But probably if you are uncertain about it, when it can come, it could be you're starting a business in 1 month down the line or 12 months down the line. Probably keep the money in the liquid funds, and it is available to you any day when you want to take out. And that's one part how they can manage them.
Thank you for that. Now, we already acknowledged in the beginning of this conversation that there exists a income gap between men and women in our country and across the world. Actually, women are paid less for the same amount of work. Now, given such circumstances, when we talk about working women, what steps can they take to meet their financial goals at par with men, knowing that somewhere as a general rule they are earning less than men, and they may have the same goals as men. So how can they create a balance between their goals and somewhat relatively lower income? I direct this question to Mr. Trivedi.
So that's a tough one, because when the income is less and the goals are similar, it's always going to be a challenge, relatively a challenge, more challenging situation. Having said that, those smaller steps taken early can really help. What are the smaller steps that you need to take? First of all, cut down on the expenses which may be unnecessary in nature. Now, who decides what is necessary and unnecessary? It's only the individual who can decide, and nobody else can. But just to put it in perspective, the whole business of funding the financial goals is providing for let's say providing for future expenses, because all the financial goals are nothing but expenses to be incurred in future. And if that's the case, today what I spend versus save is actually a equation between what I spend today versus what I spend tomorrow. If I put it in that way, then I can easily prioritize which are my important expenses. So as a rule, if I just keep an eye on what is important for me in my life, not necessarily what is urgent, what is important in my life. So sometimes the goal in the future could be far more important than what I want to do now. And sometimes enjoying life could be far more important than one of the financial goals. So to that extent, striking a balance is critical. Once one has done that, one would be able to curb some of the expenses. And the moment some current expenses are curbed, the saving increases. And when saving increases, you are able to provide for those future goals in a far better manner. Number two, longer term goals really benefit out of the power of compounding, that you invest, and whatever you earn on those investments also gets reinvested in the portfolio, and you keep earning on the earnings. If you are funding your long-term goals, don't interrupt the process of compounding. Don't take money out of that goal for unnecessary reasons. And unnecessary reasons could include some unexpected expense, or simply a panic when the, let's say, for example, stock market tanks, or when there is fear around. Don't interrupt the process of compounding if you really want to fund your goals.
Right. And while we are talking on this issue, the gender gaps that exist in our country or across the world, specifically in case of our country, our typical household has this, very strange, not strange, but, a gender gap where one person is earning and the other person is not earning at all, does not have a source of income. So I come to Mr. Lang. In such a situation, the woman who's a homemaker, who is not having a source of income of her own, how can she become financially independent? And given the fact that they live longer than men also, can they think of retiring one day from being a homemaker and just enjoy their life as a man would plan who is working, or a working woman would also plan to retire one day? Can a homemaker plan for retirement? And if she can do that, how can she go about it?
So that is a very tough question, because I don't think a homemaker ever retires. So the work at home is never going to get over, and she will never retire. So now the conundrum is that how does she have enough money if the family is not going to provide? So as I mentioned earlier, the only way for a homemaker to take care of this financial independence part is because she is totally dependent on the family money. I mean, whatever her husband is earning. So being a part and understanding what is happening, where the investments are made, if there is a situation where the husband is no longer there, then will she get the money or will she not get the money? Will she have to be dependent on her children or other members of the family in case of an eventuality? So that needs to be really weighed in, because women are so relaxed that the husband is taking care of things that they totally are not involved, especially homemakers who are not in the know of things in terms of finance. So I think the only way they can look at it is that be involved in what is happening, understand what's happening, know the people who are helping your family manage your money. So a lot of women would also don't know who's the financial advisor, who's the insurance agent, who's the mutual fund distributor. I mean, they will not know these basic things also. So know these things, talk to those people. I mean, when there are meetings happening between your husband and the advisor, just be present, just be aware of what's happening. So a lot of times women can also, homemakers can also contribute in terms of, I mean, they're not dumb. I mean, it's just that they're not having a corporate income or a professional income in their name, but they do understand things, right? They will know how the money is to be spent or what are the goals that are coming up. So lot many times homemakers can also provide very good inputs in terms of managing the money. They could also pitch in by stopping the husband from making rash decisions of about their money. So there could be times where there are fraudulent schemes like Ponzi schemes or MLM, multi-level marketing kind of schemes that are being pitched. So a woman who understands that this does not seem right, she might just put in a word and say that, okay, let's not get into this. This does not seem right. So that itself can be a big achievement, because if money is not getting lost, that is being added to the family kitty and that will grow. So I mean, these decisions the woman should be involved. So I think that is the way to look at this thing. And retirement, I mean, it does not happen. I mean, let's be practical about it. Let's not get into the jargon of retirement. For a homemaker, there is no retirement.
Vishal, I think, Akiran put it very nicely. I mean, how the homemakers' involvement. I personally feel if there are many homemakers today and if husband is managing, probably the whole shift need to come. We need to discuss our finances at home together. And this will be she may be a homemaker, but she will be the sounding board for your investments. And she can guide you time to time what decisions to take, what decisions may not be appropriate, because there is a second opinion, there is a second person. Third, when you are making these conversations better, probably the dealing of the money both of us can do rightly. Sometimes there could be a situation. I may be in, if husband may be thinking that he want to invest and wife may not be, if she is not involved, she may be thinking of spending. Probably when they both of them come together, there is a, it's called, she rightly put it, it is a family financial goals. It is not a husband goal, not the spouse wife's goal. And that conversations can make better. And probably homemakers can become better finance managers when the entire family conversations around money happens. Family takes the decisions on the finances, then you are all united for one goal, and whichever the money, whichever is coming to you, you channelize appropriately. And that's where it's not the woman's money or not the man's money, it's the family money. I used to tell, for us, LIFE is living in financial empowerment. And living in financial empowerment happens when together you are taking a collective decisions.
So Vishal, another 2 points which I forgot to mention in case of a homemaker is, a lot of homemakers I see are very good at budgeting. So they are very good at managing whatever money is coming in terms of where to spend and how to save that money which is being given for household expenses. So that is a great point which I've seen in a lot of homemakers. Women who are in corporate world probably don't find the time to do this. So I mean, it's not that they're not good at it, but probably they are short of time on that. Another aspect in relation to homemakers is that I mean, while it is the job of both parents to inculcate good money habits in their children, because homemakers are spending more time at home and with the children, it also is a big responsibility on them to give correct what do you call values in terms of money to their children, be it the boy or a girl. So it should not happen that because the mother is not working, the girl child at home feels differently about money than the boy would feel. So both kids, I mean, both genders should get the correct values in terms of money from mothers.
Absolutely, very valid point. While we have been talking about homemakers, let's get into what professional women who are working and who are earning money, how should they manage their money. So I direct this question to Mr. Rao. When it comes to investing for professional women, is there a different formula for them given their specific life stages, how their life has different stages as compared to men, their risk profile is different. How should they look at building their portfolio?
Vishal, I think, here, as Kiran has already mentioned earlier, whether it's a professional, when it's coming, they have a dual responsibility today. When there is a professional woman, one, she need to take care of her money, she need to take care of her family, and she need to take care of her future. And how she need to plan is, one, you need to definitely plan, because having meeting lot many women, most of the forums when we address and when we used to meet them on ground, some of those stories are very revealing. And probably they need to, maybe Kiran could be a right person to guide on that, because she had seen from the both angles as an advisor and as a woman herself. And as a professional woman, one, how you are managing your own money and how you are collecting money, and how your retirement planning is happening independently of the whole family. That could be a one more most important part of it. And your tax planning and collectively family tax planning. Probably onus of responsibility goes little higher, and the complexity also may become little bigger. And then how you manage that money. And it's not that somebody need to hide what you are not investing, but somebody has to make very transparent decisions what to need to do. And I have seen on the pandemic, that's a very challenging. And it's like, if there are two incomes at home, wife and husband is earning, and one of the income was going for the EMI, and that person has temporarily lost the job, and the situation was much more painful. Now you need to figure it out. Last year was a very challenging year. Keeping that in mind, even any professional woman, she need to think on those things, how you can do differently. Probably getting a right financial advisor could be the one answer where you get solutions for this. And probably I'll pass on this question to Kiran once again. She may explain much better on how she, a lot of our clients who are professional women who are coming in, how they do it.
Thank you, Rao sir. So actually, you've mentioned a lot of points which are very, very valid. Only thing I would like to add here is probably, see, when we talk about women and money, it's always seen in the negative parlance if something goes wrong. But there are a lot of situations where a working woman can be a big support if the husband, say, wants to try his hand at entrepreneurship. So I have heard the story about Mrs. Sudha Murthy. When Mr. Narayan Murthy was to start Infosys, it was Mrs. Sudha Murthy who actually provided, the basic seed money, and she said that you go ahead and follow your dreams, and I will work. So there are so many cases where we are seeing these days that the woman continues in a corporate life, whereas the husband takes the plunge into entrepreneurship. And if things go well, I mean, probably they can, continue working together in the future. Other way around, I mean, in my case, I took the plunge into entrepreneurship while my husband was still in a corporate job, and then later he quit to join me. So there could be several such cases which are also positive. So if the woman is working, I mean, this is a very big positive point where she can support the family. So not only can the lifestyle be much better, she can also have these extra support provided in these kind of situations.
Right, valid points. But so far our conversation has been around women as part of a family. We have been talking about how the goals are the couple's goals, the family's goals. But there are also situations where there are single mothers, there are widows, there are unmarried women, there are women who are divorced. So how should they look at managing their money? Because now the responsibility will be solely on them, and the management of money will also be solely on them. So are there any specific things they should keep in mind while managing their money, Mr. Lang?
See, each of these category of women have different challenges. So if you look at a broad level, so somebody who's, say, a single mother or a widow with children, so basically there are dependents involved. So there will be a two-pronged strategy for this category, wherein you take care of the present needs, that is the education of the children and all those things. So there has to be an income inflow. Now, whether that income inflow comes from you working in a corporate world, or your professional income, or any investment income, say if it is a widow, if there is any insurance money that has come after passing on of her husband, that money has to be wisely invested so that the income comes in and provides for the current income. as well as future goals that will be there. The most important goal for both women, I mean, whether it is women with dependents or women who have decided to stay single, for them retirement becomes a key goal, because there is no second person who will be helping them with their retirement goals. So where both partners are there and where both of them are working, there are two sources of income which pool into the retirement kitty. But in case of a woman who is single, whether with dependents or without dependents, her retirement is entirely her responsibility. So that becomes even more crucial for her. Within retirement, again, there are needs of healthcare. So health insurance is something that they should not forget to take. And if it is a woman who's got dependents and she's earning, then she needs to ensure that she has adequate life insurance as well.
Point taken. Now, we have been talking about specific, requirements of women so far, but there are certain things that are universal for all investors. For example, the status of, the equity markets right now. So next, I would like to, not just from the women's perspective, but from a perspective of all the investors, with equity markets at such record high levels, do you think it is a good idea to invest in equity markets right now, be it through equity mutual funds or direct equity? I direct this question to Mr. Trivedi. You have been talking about, different market levels throughout the this initiative of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund and Outlook Money. So what do you think, at current market levels, is equity a good investment?
So first of all, the question whether any investment is a good investment or not has to be seen in light of the expectations that we have from that investment, as well as the ability to handle the risks associated with that investment. So first of all, let's accept that equity markets are risky. Whatever the level, the risk is very much there. It's just that sometimes the markets move up, sometimes the markets move down, but the risk is always present. And to that extent, without understanding the risk of equity market, it is always a bad investment. If you understand the risk of equity market, then it can become a good investment. Number one. Number two, expectations. Historically, equity markets have delivered, reasonably high returns. Going forward, will that happen? And earlier also in a few programs, through few sessions, we've mentioned that going forward, be prepared for single-digit returns from equity markets even over longer periods. If you go with those kind of expectations, fair enough. And why am I saying single-digit returns? Simply because historically interest rates were closer to 8 or 10%. And if you add 4 or 5% additional premium that equity market is expected to offer, then we got 12 to 15%. Today, when the interest rates are 5 to 6%, you add that 4% and you are closer to 10%. So that's the basic idea. Now, does it mean that equity will only give 10%? No, that's not the case. It's all about the expectation. If you start with very high expectation, chances are that it will turn out to be a bad investment. Number two, in order to earn those high returns, a lot of times people end up taking unnecessarily high risks. So without understanding, those risks are taken, and that makes it a bad investment. Number three, going forward, if I expect equity markets to still deliver higher than fixed income returns, higher than inflation returns, then over a long period, it'll turn out to be a good investment. And then comes the question whether through stocks or through mutual funds. I mean, by buying stocks directly or going through equity mutual funds. It's like going on a journey when, let's say, if I want to go from Mumbai to Delhi, and I can take my own vehicle and drive it down. But for that purpose, I need to know driving. I need to focus on driving while focus on the task of driving during the entire journey. I can't do anything else. I should enjoy because it's a long journey, and I should have enough money to own the vehicle. Right? All the four conditions have to be satisfied. If even one of the conditions is not satisfied, then taking a public transport is always a better idea. I mean, I can lie down in a train. Who drives? I don't really care. I can relax, but I can't sleep in my car while I'm driving. Now, by driving the car is equivalent to managing my investment portfolio, stocks portfolio myself. A lot of people claim that they love the task of driving, but if there is a puncture in the tire and you have to change it, that task also must be loved. The same thing happens in stocks management also. I love to pick up stocks, I love to do research, but the paperwork is something that I hate. You can't do that. I mean, that's part of the package. Otherwise, give it to a professional management company, which is a mutual fund company, and let them handle it. They'll take care of all the admin, accounting, research, management, all the tasks, and for that they charge a fee. So to that extent, take a call whether you have the capability, whether you have time, interest, liking, and enough sized portfolio, which is critical. If I only small amounts, then I'm always better off giving my money to an expert I can't even afford to hire on my own. But because mutual fund is has economies of scale, I can get the best of the fund managers in India for a fraction of my total investment portfolio's amount. So that's how I would put it.
Thank you so much. We have some audience questions. Maybe we can take one or two of them before we have to conclude. I think we are almost out of time, so we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. Miss Usha Singh from Noida, she wants to ask that she is a single mother with one child. What should she do to assure better financial future, especially for children education and retirement? She is a freelancer and her monthly income is not constant.
See, this is a challenging situation for her. She has lot many responsibilities, and her source of income is not a constant flow, so it might ebb and fall at times. I think it is required for her that she has a financial plan in place. So financial plan does not mean that it has to be a constant investment every month. I mean, don't equate it with SIPs or things like that. It will just put your things like your responsibilities and your goals in place, and you will have a direction. You will know how much amount is needed at a certain point of time and how can you reach it. So if you have maybe say in simple words a target amount, say you need to accumulate 20 lakhs for your child's education 10 years down the line. So you have this goal. Now whether this goal is funded through monthly SIPs or through income that will come as and when due to your freelance job. I mean, these are two options which are available to you. So since you are not in a situation for a monthly SIP, I mean, once you know the target, you will accordingly ensure that in a particular year, you at least invest that X amount of money, whether, only once in a year or 2-3 times in a year. So that option will become available to you. And getting a financial plan done will also ensure that you make lesser mistakes, because with your kind of situation, it is even more difficult. If there are big financial mistakes that are made, you will not have the time to recover from those mistakes. So get a financial plan in order. I mean, get it in place before your investments. Look at your risk also, in terms of your health or life. I mean, if anything happens to you, how are your kids going to manage? So these are key questions in a situation where it's a single mother, and I think they need to get a financial plan done.
Vishal, in addition to what Kiran said, it's fantastic. And in such scenarios, maybe this question I asked Kiran, is it financial planning is very essential for every one of us, but any situation, if you can create a cushion of emergency fund and little more of contingencies, if you can get there, because when income is volatile and situation comes like, the importance of emergency fund will play a vital role there, Kiran?
Yeah, absolutely, Rao sir. So emergency fund, of course, I mean, when we create a financial plan, the categories broadly in a financial plan are risk management, investment management, and estate planning. And within these, there is tax efficiency. So in risk management, you look at all these situations, what if the income is not there? So there is where the contingency fund plays a large role. Then you have scenarios where there can be ill health or hospitalization. So that is covered by health insurance. And in case of death of the primary earner, there is life insurance. So these are the three critical parts in risk management. After that is taken care of, only then you can look at investment. Because if you invest your money and things go wrong, you don't have health insurance in place, or there is a job loss and you have to withdraw all your investments, I mean, that investment management is of no use. So first you need to put the risk management in place, then you move on to investment. And once the investments are in place, then there is these estate planning things like your nomination and will and other things, which will have to be part of the entire plan.
Right. I think we are almost out of time. Before we conclude, I ask this one last question to all of you. On behalf of women, how can they expand their knowledge about money management? What are some of the tips that you would suggest them? Some actions they should take to broaden their knowledge about money management and learn more about it.
Okay, thank you so much, Vishal. It's very interesting. All of us, anything you want to start now, you need to set your intention. That sometimes since this is a year International Women's Day theme is choose to challenge. Probably challenge your beliefs why you are not taking over the money and finances. And once you have that challenge mindset, then you can challenge the way you look at money yourself, and you challenge your habits and challenge your belief system, and then start learning new things. Probably like this is our 12th session in the current financial year with Outlook Money. And when I read Outlook Money, I get a lot of information from insurance to investment. Probably keep that time to learn something from the sources. And today every mutual fund, for example, if somebody is coming to my mutual fund and the website, I mean, we have a blog post, you have a podcast, and you have a hangouts. You have very many sources to learn and invest. And the second is, you always need to have earlier I said, you have a family conversations, and make your learning is also expanding with the family conversations. Probably choosing that challenging. One of the challenges is how we can together expand our investment knowledge. It is not something Greek and Latin. You can always learn. And women are definitely, they are good savers. How they can become great investors, and all that you need to get educated. And the last but not the least, if you get a right financial advisor, family financial advisor, you have these quarterly conversations around. These conversations will lead you to learn little more, and yourself not only invest more, but indulge more in learning about the investments.
Rao sir mentioned some very good points. So I think I will say that reading is a key way to learn new things. So just start reading. I mean, it could be blogs, it could be magazines, it could be books. Listen to the programs like this one, so you will get some basic ideas from here. Pick up those pointers. That so everything cannot come from a single source. So there has to be various sources from where you're picking up your information. And thanks to the digital world we live in, I mean, there is no dearth of resources available. So just decide that you want to learn. Just start reading. You will figure out how to go ahead. I mean, you will know what sounds right, what sounds wrong, and you will accordingly pick up things. Like within a blog also, there are a lot of references which are given of say other websites or books or magazines that you can pick up to read. So then just go following that trail, and I think in a while you will at least have the general basic knowledge of things, and then you can decide whether you want to formally take some more knowledge in terms of short term courses from say the stock exchanges or National Institute of Securities Market. In terms of money, these are the sources which you can look at a little later once you have the basic knowledge in place.
I'll just step back a bit and say, ultimately, what is the objective? You want to live a life of your choice, and for that you set various financial goals. So whenever you come across any financial product or a proposal, check through various sources, how does it fit into my larger objective of living my life in my own way? Does it really help me, or am I getting into something that I don't understand? Number two, and then this is, which was very interesting. During the entire discussion, I was remembering my grandmother, both my grandmothers, paternal and maternal, both had a very simple life. They were not financially literate, but they lived their life on their own terms. They managed their own personal finances beautifully well. If I ask them what is an insurance product, they would probably not know. If I ask them what a mutual fund is, they definitely did not know. Did they invest in stocks? No, they did not invest in stocks. But did they manage their money well? Yes. So what did the basic rules? They invested only in things that they understood, not beyond that. And in a few cases where they did not understand, they tried to get more information by checking through various resources. Now, I'm talking about maybe 50 years or 60 years back. Today, the times are very, very different. As both Rao sir and Kiran mentioned, there are numerous resources available to check that information. And both have highlighted, I'll just underline that once again. Check multiple resources. Don't rely only on one. And money management is the management of risk. If that's the case, understand the risk that you are getting into, understand the risk that you want to take, understand the risk that you want to avoid. That's how you go.
Right. Thank you so much, all of you, for your wonderful insights.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Happy Women's Day.